Hello, I am Joel McLeod, and welcome to the 905er. Why is it so hard to get around the 905? Traveling between cities is turning into an all-day affair. We spend more time in our cars in traffic than actually at our destinations, it seems. The traffic woes of the 905 have been a burden for Ontario's governments for years. Back when the Ontario Liberals were in power, Premier Kathleen Wynne made it a centerpiece of her platform to fix transit in the 905. Most recently, Premier Doug Ford has promised to cure traffic congestion by building more roads. More specifically, his now infamous tunnel under the 401. While a specific total has not been tabled yet, experts are estimating that it would be well into the many of billions. At that estimated price tag, it's a good idea to ask, are we going to be getting a good value for our dollar? One person who has raised that excellent question is John Lorinc of Spacing.ca. Most recently, John published an opinion piece outlining a better way we could spend the public purse and accomplish the goal of getting us around the 905 more easily. Along the communities north of Toronto, spending more on GO Transit to increase bus rapid transit to link them together, allowing commuters to bypass the 401 altogether. He has also proposed as well moving transport truck traffic onto the 407, not entirely a new idea. These are all scalable, sustainable, and more importantly, affordable options to growing transit connections between 905 communities. So why are we not pursuing this? Well, to speak about it, I've invited John on to talk about this idea and what's stopping us from making a more connected 905. John is an author and senior editor at Spacing.ca, a magazine and website devoted to urban ideas of growth and development. His articles relating to this podcast are in our show notes. Have a listen. Okay. Thank you, John Lorinc from Spacing.ca for coming on to talk about a long overdue topic on this podcast, and that is why is it so hard for us to get around the GTA, it seems, as we get denser and denser together. So, John, thank you very much for coming on and spending your time with us this morning.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
So the reason that this topic came up was I saw your column on spacing.ca. We're gonna have a link in the show notes for people free to go take a look. But basically, your argument for versus the plan of Doug Ford and the Ontario PC government to build a tunnel underneath the 401 is to, as you highlight, increase the GO Transit network amongst the communities north of the GTA. And I'm just wondering, can you maybe expand on that a bit just for our listeners so we all have a kind of a baseline of where we're going with this?
Okay, well, so the big picture is that since the 60s, so, a long time, uh, Go Transit has been oriented towards bringing people into the downtown core and has done that incredibly successfully, right? So we have a system which is very focused on suburbs to downtown. What we don't have is a very good system that deals with east-west, that provides transit on east-west basis. This has been consistently a challenge for a whole bunch of reasons.
Hmm.
Um, and the, when the premier talks about the tunnel, he acknowledges what anybody who has to drive on the 401 knows, which is that it's a hellscape and it's just getting worse. And I would add that, for your listeners who regularly use that route, they'll be familiar with the fact that the 401 has expanded. It's been widened, over the course of 20 years, and it has gotten busier. And this is a very predictable outcome of adding highway capacity. So
Hmm.
the idea of putting a tunnel under the 401 is just going to sort of take that into the next level, so to speak. And so what what I'm trying to propose or trying to sort of open up some conversation about is what does east-west transit look like? And how should we go about it? And I think that generally bus rapid transit is a highly viable option in and it's very successful in many places, and we don't do it. And
Hmm.
I think that it's something that we should be considering as an alternative to what will be a ruinously expensive and very time-consuming undertaking.
The bus rapid transit idea is not a foreign one to those of us living in the 905.
Yeah,
In Peel region, for example, Brampton has their Zoom network,
mhm.
and Mississauga has built a rapid bus transit, which
Right,
for those communities links up to Pearson Airport as well.
right.
And I know Peel has also talked about building an LRT along here, Ontario, again linking up to that network once it's completed.
Right.
So this idea is not a completely fanciful concept. What you're talking about
Yeah.
is just like Vaughan, Richmond Hill, Markham, those communities, kind of linking them together with some kind of network.
Yeah, and primarily east-west. East-west
Right.
is the important one because east-west is where we have the real deficit.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, I know that there are bus corridors in different parts of the 905, and I would argue um, that they require more resources, right? So people take transit when it's convenient and it's fast.
Hmm.
Uh, and so you can create the corridor, but then you have to put a lot of buses on it to really make it attractive to people and then make sure that the buses can travel unimpeded. So those are the three conditions that are important. And we have it in bits and pieces, but we don't have it in a really serious way. And I think that, for your listeners, uh, there's an interesting question to ask, which is that if the provincial government is willing to spend, 100 billion, 200 billion, whatever it costs
Hmm.
on this tunnel, you could provide extravagantly convenient bus rapid transit for that sum and have plenty left over for other projects.
One of the things that you had mentioned was in your articles where was the idea, kind of the low hanging fruit that the 407 is there, and
Right.
it's we can put all the transport traffic onto that, which is kind of
Yeah.
what I thought it was initially built to do, really,
Right.
back in the 90s. Um, but also the kind of the east-west corridor as opposed to thinking of the hub and spoke model. And I'm wondering, it is just a matter of we need to rethink um, just the transit idea, like get out of this kind of 1960s thinking of how our
Right.
communities exist, and start thinking of a new kind of 21st century model of how does the GTA exist in relation to Toronto.
Yeah, 100%. Like I mean, the thing is that when a lot of this infrastructure, the 401, the Go network, all was built, much of what we now know to be the GTA were farmers' fields, right? There were not people living
Right.
there. Uh, and, a lot of freight traveled by train. Uh, and, now we don't live in that world. And, as I've argued elsewhere, it's it's something that the provincial government could do in a single budget cycle is to zero rate truck traffic on the 407 and allow the 407 to do what it was supposed to do, which is to be a bypass,
Hmm.
as opposed to this kind of very expensive route that people take if they absolutely have to or if they have the means. And that's sort of chipping away at the problem, right? So I think that what we need to do is get away from the idea that there's a silver bullet, right? There's not a silver bullet. There are
Hmm.
lots of things that have to happen. So that's one of them. Another one is, really stepping up the bus rapid transit, or high occupancy vehicle corridors along, the 401 and, and then increasing investment in rapid transit across the city, across the top. Uh, and then finally, and this is the lesson from the TTC, which is that if you have really excellent local bus service feeding into these big sort of trunk corridors,
Hmm.
the rapid transit lines, then you actually get that last mile problem solved. And that's a lesson that many 905 communities, still need to absorb. Brampton totally is in there. Mississauga is doing a lot of that. So, it's changing, but it's again, it's something that if the province wanted to address the traffic problems in a sustainable way, I mean, it could help 905 municipalities really step up their investment in buses and electric buses. So that's you need all of these things happening at the same time.
The I remember back when I was a younger man, I used to work in the Ministry of Infrastructure, and this was one of the topics was bus routes, and we talked about the fact that you know existing existing legislation prohibits a municipality's busing system from really entering into another
Using the highway.
jurisdiction.
Right,
And I'm but again, these things are just fixed kind of with the stroke of a pen, if you will. And
right.
I guess bringing it up to like what opposition can you foresee on this? Because I don't know if municipalities would be that obtuse to this idea of okay, let's get somebody go on a bus, tap the Presto card or the pay card or whatever it is, and boom, I'm in Markham for a job or for visiting family, whatever the case may be.
Right. I mean, I think
Is there a lot of opposition to this? Just come like I want to hold on to my pocket of goods.
yeah, I mean, there's opposition which is not, which is mostly a relic of silos, municipal government silos,
Hmm.
that, as you correctly state, can be solved with stroke of a pen. Like we don't need to have rules. There's no, there's no law of nature that prevents, Mississauga transit buses from going to the Kipling subway station.
Hmm.
It's the thing that politicians like to fight about, but there are ways of sorting this out, just as there were ways of sorting out eventually. It took a long time. The transit that the cost, the fair integration between the nine bodies and go TTC. So these are all things that can be done. They're done as it takes will, and you have to do it in concert with finding alternatives, just adding traffic to the major highways because it just it is counterintuitive to a lot of people, but it's a hard reality that when you put lanes in, you get worse traffic.
On that note, um, you kindly sent me your column that you wrote into the Toronto Star on the impracticalities of actually building this tunnel under the
Right.
401. And I'm wondering, could we just kind of dive into that? Because
Sure.
we've heard like it's going to cost us billions, probably hundreds of billions of dollars to build this thing. But your column kind of, I think, made a good summary of what exactly are we getting into with this, and what are the problems that we're going to have to deal with that I think will make it a lot more complicated project than how Doug Ford is selling it to us.
Right. It's a, so I spoke to a couple of engineers, civil engineers. You can do it. Right? You can do a lot of things if you have an unlimited amount of money. But the reality is that it's a very difficult project. So these are the kind of problems we encounter. First of all, there are a whole bunch of ravines that, that bisect the 401s. Basically, this tunnel has to go under them or it has to be underneath the 401. You need to go if you're burying something like a tunnel, you need to go well below the footings of the existing 401 and all the municipal infrastructure that's under the 401. Uh, and then essentially you're in the water table. So you're building a very large tunnel in the water table. It creates all sorts of, there are sort of geophysical issues around doing that. But the
Mhm.
most significant thing is that there's going to be water down there and you have to pump it out and you have to pump it out constantly and in perpetuity. So once it opens, it just has to constantly be pumped. Um, and that's fine. We have to pump water out of the subways and that kind of thing. But the I think a really important point to note is that we're living in an era where the likelihood of very serious storms and floods is has become more and more common, right? And we had, in the last, 2 summers, I think, consecutive, these terrible scenes of the Don Valley Parkway completely
Mhm.
inundated, the GO rail down there, water pouring um, into the Union Station. So and these in the northern part of the GTA as well. And essentially, think of this tunnel filling up with water from time. And so how do you solve that? And it's a non-trivial problem.
Well, that's just it. Is the idea of we're going to be spending billions, hundreds of billions of tax dollars on this thing. That, quite frankly, I I'm thinking of the Boston Big Dig problem, and they
Right.
said it was going to be like a 10, 15-year project. That thing took, I don't know, 50 years or something to complete. Um, this is going to be a lot longer, and I think a lot more complex to do. So, will it ever be done? Who knows? Um, but it's just like the complexity of exactly what is it that to build this thing is. Yeah, we have the technology to do it, but just because we can doesn't mean we should. Not to mention, I thought what was interesting in your column was because of the depth that you have to dig this thing, the access tunnels, the on and off ramps into this thing. It's not going to be like, oh, I need to go over, a couple streets or a couple blocks and like you would on the 401.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're stuck down there, which you're claustrophobic. God forbid you're stuck there when if a storm hits. I'm just I'm bringing that up just to think of why are we so why is our imagination in the wrong space on this? Like the idea of building a transit system, bus rapid transit system, which I would imagine as the population increases, as it will, we can upgrade that into perhaps another GO line, build another
Right.
line across the north to accommodate the demand, which seems a lot more cost effective and a lot more sustainable and growth oriented than a tunnel that will just fill up with cars and not I can't really see it solving any of our traffic woes in the GTA.
I mean, I think that intuitively people understand that, uh, if you travel down by walk place, once you're downtown, you don't need, if you're living in Ajax and you're working somewhere in an office park at Markham, the, the commute is probably a pain, real
Hmm.
pain. But the fact of the matter is, the office where you're working is not really convenient. Um, Conveniently accessed by any other means except your car, right? So this is why this is why you really need an integrated approach where you have like the corridor transit and then you have the local transit, and really the local transit being adequately resourced, right? This is, the problem with local transit and much of the GTA is that it's left to the municipal government. And so property taxpayers are paying, a decent chunk of the cost of running those bus fleets, but it doesn't need to be that way. Uh, and so I think that uh, I don't commute on the 401, right? I'm going to drive on the 401 to get to a friend's cottage this afternoon. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. Uh, but the the way you get people onto transit is to make the service really easy to use and
Hmm.
convenient for them. And we've not really tried that on an east-west basis, except in the northern reaches of the city of Toronto, where you have the TTC that's been doing that for many years. Um, and uh, the the there is a leap of faith in all of this because there are a lot of people who live in the GTA who really can't envision getting from point A to B, doing their commute, in the morning and in the afternoon without having that last mile problem solved. They might say, "Oh, okay, well, I could take the go to into Scarborough
Hmm.
Town Center, but it doesn't get me anywhere after that. And so you need to address that issue. And it's difficult. But I think that if we think in terms of opportunity costs, and this is really like my key point here, is that if the provincial government is prepared to spend an extravagant amount of money, like a truly extravagant amount of money on a tunnel that's going to fill up with cars the day it opens, why wouldn't we do that for some other mode and really resource properly? Um, and that I think is the important conversation that needs to happen is about the
Hmm.
opportunity cost.
Absolutely. And my question, I guess, is going in the future. Do we need to rethink transit in the 905 and the GTA outside of right now? The structure seems to be about literally getting from your stop into Union Station, right? It's not even about getting
Right.
around the GTA or getting around Toronto. It is no, we just get you into Union Station, and from there you're supposed to go along your merry way in Toronto. And yet, I find over the last 10 years, for certain, especially in the post-COVID world, where people are wanting to work from home more, live in their
Mhm.
communities more,
Right.
that we need to rethink this. That the idea of the GO transit system isn't about getting everybody into Toronto; it's about getting people around the 905, and maybe even a bit wider than that, because I know the one line ends in Kitchener Waterloo. Um,
Yeah.
do we just need to start rethinking the network? And it's there. It's not like we really have to build it either. It's more just like, okay, we may tweak it a bit here and there. Like it's really, I live in Burlington. It's really hard for me to get to Brampton if I want, or Mississauga, outside of I get on the highway and I have to
Right.
navigate all that. But I should be able to get on. I don't live too far away from my GO station. I should be able to get on a bus and just okay, boom, I'm up to Milton or I'm up to Mississauga relatively quickly. Is that just we just need to get off this car centric focus and say no, we should be able to have more, be able to get around the 9 to 5 a lot easier.
Yeah. I think that that's absolutely the case. That's where we have to go. And in the defense of Metrolinx in the province, where over a long period of time, you've seen significant investment in that rail network, right? You've seen, seeing like the Huron Ontario line, LRT line is being built, and there's rapid transit being built at all over the GTA, and that's good. Hamilton's getting something there, and then the next step is to connect all of those stops with with much more adroit and convenient local transit.
Hmm.
So people don't have to schlep long distance to get to a bus stop, and they don't have to wait forever to get the bus. And then they can get into into the rapid transit network. That's the way you plan transit. Like it requires these levels. And it because because part of it is about buses everywhere, part of it is about buses, that you need to have the road allowance to allow those buses to operate in a very convenient way. And then you'll get that virtuous cycle where,
Hmm.
people know that there's no guesswork involved. They're not going to be sitting at that bus stop for 20 minutes. Uh, and then they won't be stuck in traffic for another 40 minutes. That's the way to do it. But this requires some political courage because you have to take some of the lanes, say for occupancy. These are going to be for buses. Um, I think that the trade-off, which is again something that the government has done, is to take the trucks off the 400 series highways and put them on 7, and you free up capacity on the 400 series highways, especially during, busy work hours. And then the political calculus around creating high occupancy vehicle lanes becomes less painful. It's painful, right? If you have to spend an hour every day going from Milton to Markham
Hmm.
um, in bumper to bumper traffic 2 ways, and somebody says to you, okay, well, we're going to take one of those lanes out of commission and we're just going to make it for buses. Uh, that, that's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. And so that service has to be really good then in
Mhm.
order to get people to change to it.
Yeah, that's a challenge, but I think it just comes with political will, as you said. There's because I'll be honest. The more I talk about this tunnel, the tunnel idea, um, I'm I, I really don't want to sound hyperbolic here, and I don't want to sound alarmist, but I keep thinking there's something you put in the column about the flash floodings that we get, and the fact that we it's not going to be a regular easy on off tunnel. My worry is somebody is in there, flash flooding storm comes in, and that tunnel fills up with 2 3 feet of water. You know, how many thousands of people are going to be stuck in the water? Cars just seizing up, or whatever have you. I don't know. I'm worried about that nightmare scenario, and that's just the cars seizing up. God forbid if like, there's an actual life involved somewhere in the manner there. It's just nobody's talking about this stuff, and I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation because these are kind of the nightmare scenarios that it's I don't know, maybe I'm being overreactive on this front.
Well, no, I mean, I think that, I mean, we can remember the news of the past 2 or 3 summers. We've had these, these kind of Blade Runner-ish scenes of a go train, which is up to its axles in water, stuck. And or there were those guys who were stuck in an elevator in the basement of a condo, and
Hmm.
the elevator was filling up with water. I mean, these are not theoretical problems now. They're everyday, every year problems. We're gonna have those events this summer, 100%. Just
Right.
like every year, we're now gonna have like these massive wildfires in northern Canada. This is the world we live in. And so we should be creating resilient infrastructure, not vulnerable infrastructure. Seems like a no-brainer.
I would say I would agree with you. It does. Yet we shall see if the powers that be at Queens Park agree with your eye. Um, but I think we're coming up on our time here, John. And I just want to say thank you very much again for coming on to talk with this. Great conversation to have, and I think it's one that we're going to have for the next few years about better ways to spend money rather than on a tunnel. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, John Lorinc from Spacing.ca for coming on to talk with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.